Hello, hello, and welcome. We're just about to get started. If you can hear me, can you just put some pluses into the chat? Hear and see me? Hi, Youngski, welcome back. Just waiting for the rest of our group to get started. Today we will be looking at drama and morality. So get ready for some of those difficult moral conundrums to be addressed in this lesson through the lens of A-level drama, of course. Drama obviously meaning plays, but not drama, the subject. Who else have we got in the chats? Some pluses if you can hear me, see me, if you're ready to go. It's about that time. Again, I'm seeing more people joining. This is wonderful. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Okay, so in the interest of time, let's get started. So today we're going to be looking at a two-part series within this summer school of drama at A-level, this being the play component of your A-level course. So today will be covering how does A-level drama engage with questions of morality. Some of the plays you may be studying: Othello, A Streetcar Named Desire. Some people do The Merry Wives of Windsor or Hamlet. So there's a Shakespeare component as well as a modern play component as well that we will take a look at today. And welcome to everyone else just joining. So you know who I am if you've been in this summer course last week. I'm Eleanor. I'm one of the English teachers at my EdSpace, and I will be running not only this Key Stage 5 summer course, but also the main course, summer course, from September and through the year. A 1 year long A-level course that will supplement your learning in A-level English Lit study. So, as we're still waiting for a couple more people to join the chat, this is what I want you to get started on, which is a poll. So I'm just setting up the poll now. What is the morally right choice to make? And then option A and option B. For any of you philosophy or psychology fans, you may recognize this problem as the trolley problem or the trolley car problem. I'm interested to see your answers. What is the right choice to make? This conundrum, this kind of thought experiment is that you, as seen up here, you are standing on trolley tracks and there is a trolley out of control racing towards down the line. It cannot stop. It can only be diverted into one of two lanes, and you are standing at the switchboard and you choose which lane to switch from one to the other. Either way, there will be loss of life. either option A or option B. But we need to think which is the right choice to make. If you have to make this choice and decide that this trolley car will hit either option A or option B, what is the correct choice to make? What is the right choice to make? I can see some people are typing in their choices now. A bit of a mix, A and B. Can you post in the chat why you think that is the case? What is the justification for your argument there? That A is the correct choice to make, or the morally right choice to make, versus B, the morally right choice to make. I can see the poll is still in use, so I think another couple of people are thinking of their answers here. But if you have voted already, you are inputting into the chat just your reason. Why A, why B? And if you're just joining, I can see a couple more people are joining. There's a poll open in the chat for you. Which is the morally right choice to make? Option A or option B? And once you have voted in the poll, put a message into the chat. Why is that the correct choice to make? Why is that the morally right choice to make? Let's get it started. And for those just joining, this is the classic trolley car problem, often found in psychology, often found in sociology, and often found in philosophy classes. So if you're taking any of those topics as well, you might encounter this problem because it reveals quite a lot about people. No wrong answer. We'll see how this complicates our lives going forwards to see this. So I'll wait another minute or so for people to vote and to add their answers in, but we are going to get rolling. So the lines of argument here are, okay, you are at the switchboard and you have to choose to kill the one person or kill the 5 people on the other track. You have to make that decision by changing the switchboard. And I can see Young Skiz just put yours in. B is the right choice, as if you were to pull the lever, you'll be hit with legal charges. So leaving the trolley to go will allow you to avoid legal consequences. Interesting. So the decision between making a choice versus leaving it to go the way it does, the way it will go. Yeah. Which is right? Killing the one person though, or killing the 5 people, if that's the argument we're making as well. What is the correct choice there? So you're thinking about culpability, Youngski, in that it's the you who is faced with the consequences of this decision if you choose to act versus choose to allow nature or society or life to take its course. I could see some more votes for A. So why might A be right? Why might A be right? Some could argue that in choosing to flip the switch towards option A, you're actually saving the greater loss of life, right? You are sacrificing the 1 to save the 5. This becomes slightly more complicated if you think about who these people are and you humanize both A and B, and each individual life being lost. A, yes. So A, because there's fewer people dying. Yeah, absolutely. This is a justifiable argument, right? You kill one person to save 5 people. You kill one person to save a busload of children, for example, is another famous kind of argument of the same lines there. Yes. What does this mean, though? This still means that you're choosing to kill people and you're thinking that this choice of sacrifice is morally right. This is one of the biggest themes that we see in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, which is one of the texts that people read at A level. We all, or you all as A level students, will be studying Shakespeare. There's a Shakespeare component of the A level course. So if you loved Shakespeare at GCSE, hooray, there is more. And if you were slightly more reticent about A level GCSE Shakespeare, don't worry, because Shakespeare in GCSE is often Macbeth, which though is a brilliant play with so much character and theme to think about, you are kind of given your own lines of argument that you have to argue. You have to talk about Macbeth being guilty. You have to talk about Macbeth being ambitious, and you have to talk about Macbeth dying. Here, you get to have much more nuanced, as we've said before, nuanced arguments about kind of the world in which Shakespeare is writing and why these characters are justified or unjustified, as we'll see in the trolley problem and how that links here. These are some of the themes, though, you will see across the play. The inspiration for Julius Caesar, written by Shakespeare, was Plutarch's Parallel Lives. So an ancient Greek text, early 2nd century BCE, so 200 years before the birth of Christ. Series of 48 biographies of famous men in history. So kind of sort of a series of biographies all put together as a kind of history of the culture as it stood at that point. Interestingly, Brutus had a separate biography from Julius Caesar. So you might hear the expression "et tu, Brute," for example, or hear about Brutus as being a bad guy, or Brutus as an honorable man. You may know Julius Caesar from your history classes as well. And you might know that Brutus had a part in assassinating Caesar and then sort of really throwing Rome for a huge twist in terms of its development. But Plutarch does write about Brutus as a main character and as a protagonist who is a political leader as well, who was a leader of Rome, part of the group who sort of defined what Rome looked like. And though he sort of previously in his other biographies had kind of one person per time period or per idea, this shows kind of the importance of Brutus in this play as well, and in life as well, because obviously this is a real character, as this is one of Shakespeare's history plays. So at the start, Caesar returns triumphant. So we start in media res, as we often do with Shakespeare. After a major victory over Pompey, who is his arch rival, the Romans are celebrating in the streets. Flowers, garlands around the statues of Caesar, people out celebrating in the streets, celebrating as the warriors come past, etc. And a soothsayer, a fortune teller, yells out in the crowd to Caesar, who's passing by, being applauded and celebrated and fanned over, warns Caesar to beware the Ides of March. That's an expression you might hear as well, something about bad luck and the 15th of March. But this is an old, sort of crazy looking man, and everyone around Caesar says, disregard him. This is a crazy guy, or maybe he's drunk, we don't know, but either way, he's talking gibberish. And Caesar, speaking to the crowd, says, ignore this, and then hopes that the well-wishers will bless Calpurnia, his wife, who's unable to have children. So he's hoping that all these well-wishes that are being given to him will also extend to Calpurnia, who he reveals to be unable to have children at this point. He goes into to the city and celebrates amongst the people on a kind of a big balcony in front of the populace, all assembled there, and Cassius and Brutus stay outside. So they don't enter with Caesar, and Brutus is kind of brooding on his own, and Cassius comes up to him and says that he hasn't spoken to Brutus. Are they still friends? Sort of very kind of classic, you haven't spoken to me in a minute, why are you standing out here on your own? And Brutus confesses that he's been conflicted by the people who are so excited, so proud of Caesar, so trusting in Caesar, so loyal to Caesar, saying that they want to make Caesar a king. Rome, famously, at this point, is a democracy. So he is worried that Caesar becoming a king might mean that his power becomes out of control, and thus risks what they've just fought for in preserving Rome from a tyrant like Pompey, the freedoms of the Romans and the Republic. So the Republic, capital R, and the freedoms of the Romans, capital R, these big ideas, these big concepts of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, people's agencies etc. Cassius, in response to these kind of quiet broodings of Brutus saying, I don't know if my friend, Caesar and Brutus were close friends, is going to let this get to his head, and this is going to have bad consequences if everyone's giving him too much attention right now and too much credit. But Cassius is clearly jealous of Caesar. He thinks and then he starts to kind of talk badly about Caesar to Brutus, says he's regarded too much as a god, and he tells Brutus that Brutus is as loved as Caesar is by the people. Why isn't Brutus getting this credit? All of them, any of the people in their circle would make just as good a leader as Caesar, but Caesar's the one who's getting all of this attention. And we can see that kind of Iago-esque influence that's starting on Brutus, even though he's defending his friend and saying there's, Caesar is a great guy. There's no reason for him to be doubted, except for the fact that everyone who has too much power, Macbeth, for example, gets corrupted. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? Caesar, on and offside at the same time, mentions to Mark Antony, his close friend, who you also might know the name of from history class, that he doesn't trust Cassius. And so there's clearly sort of two different parties going on here of discussion. And immediately, this is the first scene, immediately we know there's some kind of conflict going to start here with these two different sides. Angel, good question. Is this in the exam board of Pearson? It kind of depends on your school and what they offer. It has been offered in the past. It's usually a school's choice to decide what they want to do, and that depends on a bunch of factors. Most schools do Othello, but rather than sort of in this summer school course try and give you a crash course in Othello, we want to just kind of explain what the drama looks like. The main course will cover a whole term's worth of Othello content, though, if that's what you are. So when you hear back about your exams on the 21st, right? And you can make your decisions from there about schools, then check with them, and you might find that our course will be really good for you if you, depending on what your course is offered. Any other questions, feel free to keep popping them into the chat and I'm happy to answer them. Anyway, so another character, Casca, comes and informs Brutus and Cassius that Mark Antony has offered Caesar a crown 3 times in front of the crowd, and the crowd is cheering, saying, make Caesar king, make him emperor, but Caesar has refused every time, says, no, 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 Rome is a republic, it's a democracy, no. However, the last time he hesitates a little bit before saying no, 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 no. So we can see even then that maybe Brutus and Cassius are right? This attention, this lords, this power could be starting to influence Caesar's behavior a little bit. To wit as well, Caesar then falls to the ground in what modern interpreters understand as a seizure, but some kind of epileptic fit. And immediately, this throws again questions to Shakespeare's audience about Caesar's ability to rule. Things like epileptic fits or seizures were viewed as not a health concern, but rather some kind of corruption or supernatural influence on a person's being, or maybe revealing some kind of weakness. So interesting that power is offered and weakness responds here. And then Cassius, at the end of this scene, asks that Brutus meet with him later to discuss this further, then muses to himself how easily Brutus can be led into a conspiracy against Caesar. So Cassius now shows his cards to the audience. Through this dramatic irony, we see that Brutus isn't aware that Cassius has kind of a underlying plot or scheme in mind. But interesting that he is self-aware enough to say, if I were Brutus, I wouldn't trust the Cassius in speaking to me and what he is trying to get out of the situation. So let's take a look at the exposition of Julius Caesar and do a little bit of thinking about what is suggested by this being one of the very first lines in the play. So the soothsayer says, beware the Ides of March. beware here, a command, obviously an imperative. And the Ides of March refers to a specific day, the 15th of March. Here. Interesting that it's a short sentence here. Interesting that the soothsayer here is unnamed, right? Just kind of a random external character. Though with Shakespeare, these kind of unheard, unattributed voices are often quite telling, right? Who is this who's really speaking? If you think about the witches in Macbeth, who is it who's saying this? Or, for example, the Banquo's ghost as well. These kind of echoes as well. If you've read Hamlet as well, the Hamlet's father's ghost. All of these are kind of disembodied voices. He's speaking out from a crowd. And it's interesting that this might be a kind of augur from the beyond, right? Some kind of omen from God, from the future, from fate, right? These warnings seem to come sort of from the space itself, from the crowd. Why might this make sense? Because it's interesting that the crowd itself is kind of breathing out this warning, and that seemingly to the audience and seemingly to the characters on stage, Shakespeare is setting up a scene in which everything is going really well, but there's this underlying shadow of corruption. So corruption, warning, foreshadowing, very classic Shakespeare in that there is no possibility that things can go well for very long, right? With the tragedies in particular. As soon as things start to go really well, that seems to be the moment in which the tragic hero emerges, right? Let's see how this is responded to. Caesar does listen to it, but he says he is a dreamer. Now, there are multiple different interpretations of this sentence here. One of which could be that he is asleep. So Shakespeare is sort of metaphorically saying, oh, he's dreaming. You know, he's asleep. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But we have to think about what Shakespeare's audience think about dreams. We might know this from Macbeth, for example. Dreams reveal, right? So dreams reveal conscience, dreams reveal the future, dreams reveal warnings. So is this some kind of almost Shakespeare half acknowledging, even if he's being dismissive, the fact that this could be some kind of portent of the future? Or is this some kind of influence from the from Shakespeare's, sorry, not from Shakespeare, from Caesar's future? However, short sentences cuts him off. We have this dismissive tone. Let us leave him pass. Notice. So interesting here, we have this sense of dismissiveness. That again immediately foreshadows for us. That immediately foreshadows for us that this is a warning not to be dismissed. Because anyone who does not take a warning seriously in Shakespeare usually regrets it and rues the day, right? Let us leave him. However, this is not an option. Because, as suggested from the beginning, fate cannot be escaped. This links to definitely the Jacobean era. What was the sort of chain of command that in Shakespeare's time that showed that you were kind of born in the place that you were and you stayed in that place across your life? You were assigned a status at birth or even before birth, and thus had to live in that echelon of society for your entire life. If anyone can pop into the chat, what was that called? Sort of structure of society in which you're born into a certain place and your fate is determined for you. Can't see it, so I'm going to give you it. The Great Chain of Being, right? So we can see these Jacobean ideas immediately introduced into Shakespeare's interpretation of Julius Caesar. We have warning, we have dismissal of warning, which immediately foreshadows that this warning is going to come back, and indeed does. It's going to echo across the text and build the tension as a refrain, Ides of March, Ides of March, Ides of March, as the plot against Caesar continues to build. Caesar is continuously warned and does not take the warning. Then let's take a look. Trumpets play and a shout sounds. So trumpets in Shakespeare often indicate some kind of royal entry. So immediately this suggests something, right, to us, that Caesar is being celebrated or indicated to be some kind of royal here. This is immediately harmful to the idea of democracy, isn't it? If we have this flourish, as a trumpet's playing is often called in stage directions, that there is already this expectation by the crowd, or treatment by the crowd, of Caesar as a king. And a shout sounds. This is a shout of welcome, of praise for Caesar. And it is interesting because it sort of unites the masses here, the masses who we don't see as a group, but it kind of creates this idea for us. Remember, we don't see Caesar on stage, we only hear it from essentially behind where Caesar is. Unites the masses. We have this kind of huge idea of people, of Rome assembled here. But it's interesting that we are not with Caesar in front of the crowds seeing this all happen. We're actually separate from the action, much like we are for much of Shakespeare, especially the important parts where the king is somewhere else and people are scheming elsewhere, so that this idea of kingship becomes ethereal, becomes intangible. The intangibility here of kingship as well as of republic. And we're off to the side with Brutus in this scene. So we're hearing this huge reception from Caesar's entry, and we're getting this idea of the masses. We can hear them celebrating as one. But Brutus is the only one who seems to question this at this point. He says, what means this shouting? So he doesn't immediately associate Caesar with this. And that's already telling, right? That he doesn't necessarily think, oh, they're shouting for Caesar to celebrate him. Instead, he says he fears this. The people choose Caesar for their king. He fears this. So immediately we're foregrounded and submersed in fear as an idea for this play. He fears that the people choose Caesar for their king. And notice this idea of choice immediately as well appears in the play, because choice is inherent to a republic, right? Is inherent to a democracy, is inherent to the idea of Rome. But this juxtaposes with the idea of kingship. Kingship and democracy at this time are in opposition. There is kingship and sort of martial law and dictatorship and monarchy, and then there's choice. And there is kind of a tension between the two immediately. And Cassius, immediately, now that we know a little bit about his sort of underlying questioning, appears to sort of subtly build these doubts. Build these doubts into Brutus's mind. I must think you would not have it so. Listen to the conditional language here. Cassius, very much like Iago, is very good at building doubt and guiding someone else to conclusions without seemingly getting their hands hugely dirty. Must think that you would not have it so. So have it. It here becomes very a broad meaning. This could mean Caesar being king, but this could also mean this celebration being what it wants to be. It could be this victory looking like this. It could be that Rome moving in this direction. It could be commenting on the people celebrating like this, that this is not appropriate for a democracy to heroize one person and thus villainize the idea of egalitarianism. Brutus then says, I would not, Cassius, yet I love him well. Immediately here, juxtaposition. And this is going to really foreground on understanding of Brutus across the play. He is going to love Rome and love Caesar. And these are going to currently continue to be the same direction, and that at some point these are going to have to split, and he is going to have to choose which does he love more, or which will he save? The same question that we have with the trolley problem. I will just move myself so you can see for a moment. Just so you can see, I put split choice, and then which will he save? Will he save Rome or will he save Caesar? And this is what Cassius says, and notice an aside, such an indicator, such an indicator of insidious thought, right? And immediately suggests Cassius's negative intentions or bad intentions. That this is something selfish, right? That this is something fueled by jealousy or fueled by power. If I were Brutus now and he were Cassius, he should not humour me. So telling that Cassius is so self-aware because he's putting himself in Brutus's shoes and saying he should not humour me. So he should not listen to me, pay me any mind, consider my options as valid, validate my words against Caesar. So interesting that immediately we're foreshadowing that Cassius like Iago, like the witches, or Lady Macbeth or Macbeth himself. It's going to drive Iago, oh my goodness, not Iago, Brutus or Iago, Othello in Othello, obviously, Brutus into some kind of downward spiral. And he's going to do this knowing that his intentions are bad. And he sort of leaves Brutus to this thought. And there are other instances of Brutus watching and witnessing Caesar, enjoying the limelight and enjoying the attention, and possibly taking on this role and starting to move down a path of leadership that could be slightly more questionable in terms of its longevity and its good for Rome. Brutus is in a moral dilemma now. He is thinking, what do I do? And you may think, who is he to think anything, that he ought to do anything? He's a statesman of Rome. He is someone who is charged with looking after Rome and ensuring its democracy. And he loves Rome so much, he loves his country so much, that he wants to preserve that at the expense of anything else. And in this moment, in Act 2, Scene 1, he finds himself unable to sleep. Again, we know that that is the sign of a bad conscience, or of a guilty conscience, or of some kind of moral dilemma in Shakespeare's time. And we see that he is speaking to a servant, saying, "Get me a taper in my study, Lucius. When it is lighted, come and call me here." So immediately we see a candle here. What might a candle symbolize? Into the chat. What might a candle symbolize? We've seen candles in A Christmas Carol. We've seen candles in Macbeth. You've seen candles or lights if you're studied in Inspector Calls. What do candles symbolize? What does light symbolize? Straight into the chat. Remember, you must consider the light, you must consider the warmth, you must consider the Jacobean era. What did light represent there? What does it represent for us now? Into the chat, quick as you go. Let's see some answers. Okay. I'll wait for your messages, but I'm going to keep going just so that we have time to get through this whole thing. So this candle here, Jacobean era. Candle, light. God is light in the Jacobean era and the devil is darkness. So we have that juxtaposition immediately of Brutus in darkness, wanting and asking for a candle, wanting and asking for light. So darkness then is doubt, is temptation, is guilt, is uncertainty. And the light is guidance. The light is wisdom. The light is clarity. The light is God and goodness. So it seems that Shakespeare is presenting Brutus as someone who is surrounded by physical and metaphorical darkness and is seeking light, is seeking truth even, and confirmation of what he must do. Interesting that Brutus is asking someone else to light this candle and that he will only come to the room when it has been lit. So he is asking for guidance. He's unable to find it himself. He's asking for it to be delivered to him. So we can see immediately that Brutus is in real conflict with himself here and what he must do. What is the right thing to do? And he starts then, says, "It must be by his death, and for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general." he would be crowned. So it seems like he's made his decision here. Caesar must die in order to preserve Rome. Better to kill him and to avoid the potential tyrant he could become that would destroy Rome and destroy democracy for everyone, than to lose his friend who is a good guy and has not done anything wrong. As we can see, no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general idea that he could possibly be a tyrant in the future. Interesting that we see this, because this general, it's so ambiguous here. And much of Brutus's language is sort of self-contradictory, or it's doubted, or it's qualified or mitigated in some way. And this shows his indecision in this moment. He's speaking back and forth to himself, much like Macbeth does, much like Hamlet does, as they're trying to make a decision. He has no cause to spurn, and for my part, and notice the use of space here and the use of rhyme scheme means that this line here takes an extra moment to breathe here. For my part, what is Brutus's role here is what he's asking. What justification do I have this, and why should I act this way? He would be crowned. So here we have this conditional language, but we have the interruption of the line through punctuation that really seems to couch this fear. This is what he is fearing. He would be crowned. Pause here at the end of the line. Think about the effects of that. Could Caesar handle that? How might that change his nature? There's the question. Would this have a corrupting influence on him? Could we be brought to tyranny by allowing Caesar to become king? Would this actually be Brutus watching something he knows is wrong happening and letting it happen anyway? Where is the complicity for himself here? That's the question, or there's the question. And we can hear this idea of questioning. Brutus is questioning himself. He's questioning the decision. He's questioning the future. He's questioning Caesar. He's questioning everything here, including the idea of right and wrong. It is the bright day that brings forth the adder that craves wary walking. Crown him that, and I grant we put a sting in him that at his will he may do danger with. So, if you know, an adder is a snake, a type of venomous snake. That is dangerous, right? We've seen snakes before in Shakespeare and in other texts in which a snake is a symbol of poison, a symbol of corruption, a symbol of death. And also a symbol of evil, right? Because we have this even as a biblical allusion to whom? To Satan, right? In the Garden of Eden. So they are suggesting that this is evil. So he's saying it's the bright day, it's the warmth, it's the good days that bring forth the danger. It's not when everything is going wrong that the danger sparks, but rather the good days. So when everything is going well. So it's this idea of forethought. He has to think ahead in order to stop something happening before it does happen, rather than being too late. That craves wary walking. So there's that W sound in there that really does add, through its consonants, its soft consonants, this sense of sort of wobbliness here, fragility, vulnerability even. And again, we see the word crown. Crown him that. We can see the reflection here of what Brutus is thinking about through that repetition. Crown him that. And then I grant we put a sting in him. So unlike a an adder that's born with a stinger, or poison of its own, Brutus is suggesting that this act of crowning Caesar will make him these things. If we crown Caesar, we will have made him dangerous. So we will have enabled him. It will be through our actions that Rome is destroyed. And at his will, so whenever he decides, he may do danger with this danger of destroying Rome. Let's take a look at the second half of this extract now. This is where he carries on straight from there. The abuse of greatness is when it disjoins remorse from power. So greatness corrupts, in other words. And granted, notice here, he's not thinking that Caesar is bad. He's calling Caesar greatness. When it disjoins, when it disconnects remorse from power. So he's saying that it's not power that's inherently evil itself. It's when power is removed from any sense of feeling bad or questioning or doubting itself, or feeling repentant for taking power. And to speak truth of Caesar, I have not known when his affections swayed more than his reason. So he's saying his loves, his emotions have not come before his reason. So Brutus is saying for Caesar, reason triumphs over affections. That is a good indicator of a good leader, right? A good leader prioritizes the good decision over what they personally want or over their own emotions. And then I've cut slightly just for abbreviation's sake, but so Caesar may. Notice, again, this conditional language throughout Brutus's talk that fills us with doubt. So we wouldn't necessarily zoom in just on this may and suggest that this causes doubt. We would say that there's a pattern of conditional language, or Brutus's conditional language imbues his speech with doubt, and thus suggests how much he is doubting both Caesar and the future under Caesar's rule. Then, lest he may prevent. So, he is saying here, it's kind of tricky language. We're hearing the may again. He may do this, he may do this, he may do this. We can hear that Brutus is reflecting crown, crown, crown. He may, he may, he may. This is all absolutely projecting, right? We don't know, and it seems he doesn't know what Caesar will do. Indeed, Caesar doesn't know what he'll do. But he's saying here, prevent. We have to prevent as a contingency plan, as a contingency for avoiding tyranny, avoid tyrants in general, avoid kings. And since the quarrel will bear no colour for the thing he is, fashion it thus. So interestingly here, no colour. Colour is big in Shakespeare, right? We've got greens, we've got reds, we've got whites, we've got blacks. Bear no colour for the thing he is. So that suggests that because they're killing him preemptively, deciding to kill him to preempt tyranny, he's kind of thinking how he's going to justify this to other people, right? What he is augmented, so bigger, would run to these and these extremities. So imagine him now, who he is if he gets worse and worse and worse. In other words, the worst case scenario. He's saying, Caesar is this now. Him in the worst case scenario could be a tyrant. So let's avoid it entirely. And interesting that we have it this way, fashion it thus. So there's this idea almost of crafting here, of dressing something up, possibly covering something up. Is it possible that Brutus has his own sort of aspirations, or has his own kind of private subconscious reasons for wishing ill upon Caesar in this way, or planning his death? Possibly. But it does seem like he's kind of trying to obscure this from himself, right? He's trying to delude himself. He's trying to convince himself to do this. And interesting. Therefore, think him a serpent's egg. So we had the serpent. Now we have the serpent's egg. One of my favorite Macbeth quotations is "what you egg," because egg is potential. Egg is youth. Egg is future, right? But it's also fragility. It's vulnerability. Think of him as a serpent's egg. Something easily dealt with now, right? You could easily crush this egg and crush this potential tyranny now and avoid the problem entirely, because the snake itself won't grow. Caesar, tyrant, will not grow. But becomes much more dangerous when hatched. So this idea of nascent growth, right? And would as his kind. So as is natural to him, or as is natural to a serpent, grow mischievous. So he's saying, it's not even Caesar's fault. It's just that some people who have this kind of power can't handle it. And it's no fault of their own, but they just cannot help themselves from this going really badly. So instead, Brutus decides that he must kill him in the shell. And interesting, right? Because killing in the shell, killing this kind of preformed life, is a sin, is a crime, right? Because it's killing something that is innocent. But killing something that is innocent for now. And who's to say, right? We are thinking about these worst case scenarios here. He's trying to preempt a bad thing, but he has no ground to stand on. So this is all very dangerous thinking. He is at an impasse now. What does he do? So Brutus himself is in the trolley car scenario from previously. Moving down so you can see that a little bit more. So what does he kill? Does he kill Caesar, who has done nothing wrong but may become a tyrant? Or does he kill the freedom and well-being of the people of Rome and the idea of the republic and democracy overall? What does he do? And I am going to pop again a poll into the chat. What would you do in Brutus's position? Would you choose option A, or would you choose option B? Would you, like young Ski said, would you just avoid entirely and watch it take its course? That's kind of tricky in this situation, because either way, one or other will suffer, won't they? So poll is up. Option A, option B. Click which one you think is right, and I'd love to hear some answers posting in. So I can see Young Ski, Angel have been into the chat so far, but we've got quite a few more people here, and I would love to hear some of your thoughts on this. What do you think is right here? What do you think is right? Do we kill the egg and thus kill an innocent at the expense of saving Rome and saving everything we love, home and country? Or do we let someone who is potentially dangerous continue to be dangerous? We can see these kinds of ideas in society now. I can see option A. Interesting. So we're going to kill our close friend who's done nothing wrong, just to play devil's advocate. We're going to do that at the expense. We're going to save Rome at the expense of Caesar, the war hero who trusts us and loves us and does not want us to do anything other than be part of this new Rome, saved from Pompey, that we will be. I can see option A, still 100%. Anyone want to argue the alternative, that it's not worth saving Rome, that Brutus is wrong for even questioning this? Here we are. I'd love to see some of the answers in the chat. Or do we kill the serpent? Do we kill the serpent's egg, or do we watch the serpent poison us and kill Rome itself? Kill the idea of Rome, make it something that's completely different and broken from what it was. Option A is still going strong. Okay, interesting compared to what we had in the beginning when you thought about this moral dilemma for the first time. Different alterations of that trolley car question are really interesting. For example, in that original problem, when option A is one person and option B is 5 people or 100 people, for example, most people tend to argue you choose A, right? You save the group of people at the expense of the one. But then you can change it. So, okay, the option A is your mum or your best friend or your pet. Where do you choose from there? And that really starts to complicate where things are in the situation, right? Because your emotional attachment then is different than it would be if this one person was a stranger and these 5 people were strangers, right? If there's a personal connection with that option A, most people would then choose to save the option A, the person that they love and care about, at the expense of the 5 people or the 100 people. And is that wrong if you do that as well? A said this is hard. Yes, because Caesar could possibly not become a tyrant, and maybe having a king could be better. Exactly. This is what Brutus is thinking. So that's why you're absolutely right. This is hard. That could be like the subtitle of this play is, this is hard. What do I do? Exactly. You're totally right on this. But difficult to say. We'll have to see how they get on. We're going to do one more lesson on Brutus and the fallout from this decision. And it seems like he's going to kill him for now, but we don't know. We will see on Friday in lesson. I hope you enjoyed the homework and the video solutions. There was a lot of guidance in those video solutions on how to construct paragraphs and what that looks like at a high level. Your homework and your video solution for today should already be posted, and your ones for Friday should be posted ahead of the time as well, and they go live on when this lesson clicks off. So have a little think. Some of the reflections on the homework, you don't necessarily have to do a full essay, but it's worth it to kind of get into that spirit and get into that habit of writing, right? Where you can think about that nuance. There's so much to think. I feel like that's the comment for the lesson, right? This is hard. What do you do? Thank you guys so much for your attention. I look forward to seeing you on Friday. Have a look at the homework, have a look at the video solutions, and we will discuss more then. I'm going to end it here, but feel free if you have any other questions to pop into the chat, and I will take a look at it before Friday and answer any questions you have further then. Take care. Bye.